Good morning, and first of all, happy St. Patrick's Day. I just realized as I sat down here, this is St. Patrick's Day, and at least I've got some green over there. So we're trying to be appropriate. I guess I wasn't quite with the calendar this morning when I was getting dressed, but a happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone who celebrates. And this is a day when New York seems to be Irish through and through. I'm Greg Johnson. I'm the president and CEO of GJP International, which is Greg Johnson Partnerships International. And here in New York, I have the great privilege of serving as the chief advisor to the CEO of Emblem Health for family caregiving. I want to welcome you to this broadcast, Onward in Love and Caregiving. And it's been our joy to share this broadcast with each and every one of you all over the world. And we continue to expand, and I am more than joyful. I feel so blessed that people are hearing of this program, that they are listening to it, and that it is you folks who are sharing it one with another, because that's what it's about. It's a conversation together. And a conversation is what I'm always interested in. And one of the ways that you can be in contact with me is through our corporate email. And that's very simple. It's all small case, Greg Johnson at gjp-international.com. Greg Johnson at gjp-international.com. And I invite you to write to me, to share what you're going through, to share with me perhaps something that resonated, something that you had a question about, or a suggestion of something that you would like me to focus on in a future broadcast. And as always, I invite you to share your caregiving story. I am trying to collect these from all over the world in their great unity and diversity. I invite you to share those stories, and I would be in contact with you, of course, before I would share them in any form without your permission. That I am very strong about. But it's pieces of you and pieces of me that put us all back together. And family caregivers, today I'm beginning this broadcast with some news that is just phenomenal. This past week, it was announced by AARP here in America. They have been doing research and supporting family caregivers from the very, very beginning, and Emblem Health has been very active from the very beginning, and we've had the privilege of doing many different projects together. And this one that they have concluded presently is so vital and so important, but it is earth-shaking, quite frankly. It was chaired, I believe I'm correct when I say that, by Dr. Susan Reinhardt, one of the brilliant scholars at AARP, someone whom I have admired for a very, very long time, and to whom I feel very grateful. Dr. Reinhardt and her group of associates released a paper that is just really earth-shaking. It is a statement, and the title of it is Valuing the Invaluable. Valuing the Invaluable. You are the invaluable, my dear friends, family caregivers of the world. Now, this paper deals with the United States, so the numbers reflect America. But it states that in recent years, the valuation for all the free services unpaid given to America and to people who were needing caregiving, the value, if they were paid, would have been 600 billion US dollars. Yes, 600 billion US dollars. Talk about a contribution. It's huge. Thank you. Thank you. And you need to know this number. Now, you can believe that I'm going to be talking about it a great deal. I'm going to be talking to it with legislators. I'm going to be talking to the people who are doing programming. I'm going to be talking to people who are doing government funding and other types of funding. To be able to say, this is a group of Americans who are basically Americans because it's done in this country, but it's a group of people here in America who are donating $600 billion worth of care in 1 year. We need to support these people. There's no case, it's case closed. No one is giving more. And so let's celebrate. Thank you, AARP. Thank you, Susan, and your wonderful team. And if I've forgotten anyone, forgive me. It's simply that I wasn't aware. This is important work. And it's important now just to take a moment to celebrate and to give thanks for each and every person who made up that donation of 600 billion US dollars. God bless. This is so earth-shaking. So we begin with some incredibly exciting news. And last evening, I had a wonderful opportunity, and I decided I'm going to share just a part of what I talked about last night with all of you. Yesterday, we had one of our beloved nor'easters. Those are big storms that come up the east coast of America. And so we had snow and rain. And as the day went on, I thought, oh, I'm afraid no one is going to come to this event. And I was being a bit worrisome about it. Well, no one seemed, everybody seemed, the show goes on, and that's certainly part of my background. So, of course, thank heavens, I was able to have my car come and get me and have my caregiver get me in the car because I'm not walking all that well, but we're getting better. And we went off to Brooklyn Heights, which is the next borough here. And I had the great privilege of speaking to an audience that filled the room. I want to tell you, caregivers, nothing stops them. The snow, the rain, whatever. This room was filled. Every seat was taken. And some people were actually standing. Now, where was I? I was in Brooklyn Heights, which is maybe a 20-minute ride from my home here in Manhattan. And it's one of the most charming parts of all of New York. And it's something that many of you have seen in motion pictures because it's the scene so often. And I went to 21 Clark Street to the Watermark. It is a retirement community. It's a fabulous, gorgeous property. It's a retirement community. But on the second floor, there is a memory care unit. And that memory care unit is being directed by a very dear friend of mine, Michael Coluccio, who is absolutely brilliant and such a gift, and his colleague, Lisa Kapp, who is a very elegant and beautiful woman who is very active in promoting this wonderful floor. And yesterday was to be the launch of outreach to the families, to the community, to various persons who participate. And so we had a great audience. And it was my privilege to be one of the speakers. And, you know, often when we do a project, particularly of this nature, I had suggested that a colleague of mine, a brilliant psychiatrist, join us. Unfortunately, she lives farther up in New York, and they were very much snowed in. So she will be coming to speak later. But it ended up that Michael and I did the program, and we were talking about, obviously, Alzheimer's and dementia. And so I want to share just a few of the things that I talked about. I came at it from a spiritual perspective. Now, when I say that, that's not a religious perspective, but the spiritual, those things that are the essence of us. You know, I use that term forever because our journey in life is from ego to I got to do this, I. And then as we go, we begin to find it's about the essence. Who are we? What makes our decisions? It may have a religious component, it may not. You may be struggling with that. That's perfectly fine. Struggling is part of the journey. But I had the privilege of speaking with this group of people. And, I mean, we always talk about body, mind, and spirit. That's who we are. One of the many trilogies that come into caregiving: care recipient, professional caregiver, family caregiver. Who do we need? Government, nonprofit, for profit. There are many trilogies of this nature. And we as human beings are body, mind, and spirit. And I particularly love to speak from the spirit point when I'm talking to a family, and when I am so blessed to have such brilliant scholars to talk about body and mind. And so my point last night was, first of all, to celebrate the 600 billion, because I wanted these wonderful caregivers who had come out in this horrible snowstorm to be present and to share. I also shared a bit of my own story. I realized one of the gifts of being asked to speak to various groups of people who have specific, particular physical conditions gives me a moment to look back into my own family's life and to realize that right now I'm involved in the fifth of my families dealing with someone in our family with dementia, with Alzheimer's. Now, I want to just briefly, I'm not the psychiatrist, I'm not the medical doctor, but I can say this so that we can help with these words, because words can be confusing. Dementia is the umbrella. Think of it as the umbrella. Last night we needed umbrellas, that's for sure. And one of the main stems, actually perhaps one of the biggest handles of that umbrella, is a specific disease called Alzheimer's. And it is a long goodbye and a very difficult situation. And it brings in a great deal of concern. And this is why I particularly like to talk to the caregivers, to help them on their journey. And I feel there are a few things that we need to think about. One of them is time. Time is a human construct. We relate to things because, oh, it happened before your graduation, or no, that was after you were married, I think. Or when grandmother died, wasn't that was before? We put things in context, but they are our own doing, because right now, there are 24 different hours around the world of what time it is right now. It's 11:30 in the morning in New York City. In Bali, it's 11:30 at night, 12 hours ahead. So time is as fluid as can be, and it's something that we use as a construct. In the world of Alzheimer's particularly, I have always found, and I have learned this again and again from people with whom I have been blessed to work as they were caring for their loved ones. The constant theme is my journey in being a caregiver. Because remember, we are caregivers. We're not curing it, we can't control it, and we didn't cause it. So we are caring, we are being present for. But being present for often means, with Alzheimer's, leaving our time zone and moving on with the person, with the care recipient, to whatever time they may be dealing with. Because it's a truth that the most recent facts are the first to go. But past history comes along. I had a grandmother who used to talk to me about her grandmother. And of course, she knew that I knew the woman. Well, the woman had been dead probably almost a century before I was born. But I was very young at this time, but I do remember it. And grandma would say to me, my grandmother would say to me, I want to talk to to grandma. And I said, oh, I talked to her just the other day. She's extremely busy, but she sends you her love. And we could move on. And the rest of my family said, where did you come up with that one? That's where she was. There was no point in my saying to her, oh, Grandma, your grandmother's been dead for years. Why have a funeral when you don't need to? That was taken care of. So I urge people when they're talking and dealing with an Alzheimer's dementia patient, respect the time of the care recipient, wherever they may be. Don't try and discuss it. Be gentle, accepting, and you will be far less frustrated. Also, as the disease progresses, I have often found that those are the moments when we really see that just maybe, and you've heard me say this many times before, that just maybe we aren't human beings trying to have a spiritual experience in this thing called life. No, rather, we are spiritual beings having come from and returning to spiritual beings having a human experience, locked in time and space. Those are things of humanity. These others, you have a lifetime to put nouns to them. You've got time to study. You've got time to ask questions. But why do I say that? Because it's when we look at it as being spiritual beings into each and every one of us. Now, whatever words you like, don't get hung up on words. The divine, the spirit, the holy, the precious, the universe. Place that spark of life into us and to each and every other person we know. And there comes a point where, in truth, we can only communicate spirit to spirit. Yes, I can talk here with my loved one if they're able even to talk. But I can converse with that spirit. And we do it every time we have a broadcast. How do we end? With the word namaste. The divine, the spirit, the spark within me honors and respects the spark of the divine within you. And we connect. And we are one. I'm feeling it right now as I'm speaking to you, and I pray that you are feeling it. This is when we know we are not alone. Give it some thought. Also, and this is something that I think is extremely important, as you progress, don't talk to the disease. It doesn't do any good. Now, I'm not comparing Alzheimer's to alcoholism, but after 33 years in recovery, I talk a great deal to alcoholics. I never talk to the disease. How many times in people's lives have you heard someone came home absolutely bombed out of their mind, drunk, and the spouse, the partner, the friend went on and on and on and on, screaming at them, telling them, why have you done this? Why do you keep doing it? Blah, 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 blah. And they talk to the disease. Because in the morning, what's the case? Person wakes up with terrible headache, not feeling terribly well, but doesn't remember a thing that you said. And who's exhausted? You are. Now, this is vintage Al-Anon, but it's very important. Don't talk to the disease, but you can talk to the spirit. I have often said many in recovery are the result of the silent prayers of many a grandmother and spouse who simply prayed and spoke to that inner being and had the divine connect. That's a very important thing for us to remember so that we can care for ourselves. Remember, what is the rule in family caregiving? Before I can care for you, I've got to care for myself. And when it gets to these very intense situations, we need to look at ourselves. Now, music. I think, and I'm thrilled for this, that music is probably the last thing that will leave us. And it is from the world of the spirit, because it's beyond words, it's beyond understanding. It overwhelms us, it envelops us, it soothes us, and it speaks to deep needs. It's very important to begin doing your playlist. I have mine. Long ago, I started making notes of that. What are my favorites? I don't want Mahler's fourth, I want Mahler's fifth. Now, that sounds like a funny thing to say, but I happen to love it. Well, if I don't tell anybody what I love, meaning well, they're going to put a bunch of things onto a pod, put it in my ear. That's not what I'm going to want to hear. But give me the music. And last night we had a gentleman there, a caregiver. But this man is so enraptured with the music of Broadway, literally from the 20s to the 50s. He and I had a lovely conversation after the meeting. And he said, "Oh, I'm so glad you spoke about making a list." He said, "Because that's the music I would like to hear." And I said, "Well, I suspect you could send me that list and I would like to hear it as well." So don't forget music. And the fifth thing, don't forget laughter. There are going to be things that are going to be said that in truth are funny. Laugh. We're never laughing at anyone, but we're laughing with. We're laughing that in a life that we've been blessed to have, we never expected to be going through what we're going through. And I always say, not going through, but we're growing through. We're learning. And I have to chuckle. I never thought I would be doing that. But by grace, I can. And by grace, you can. And by grace, together, we are walking with each other. We're walking each other home. But there are funny things that happen along the journey. And each of us say funny things. When we were well, I mean, I say lots of funny things. Sometimes I just look in the mirror in the morning and I think that's funny enough. But seriously, there's nothing wrong with laughter. And I can't urge that enough. I wanted to share these with you this morning, and I wanted to make the final statement. Now, we have done many times, and I've done an in-depth series on the Friends Indeed spiritual principles of family caregiving, the 6 spiritual principles. And I have always loved, more than anything, the 6th principle in this series. And let me just remind you, I used it last night because I wanted people to leave remembering this. Understand that nothing is going wrong. And often with an Alzheimer's situation like people are going through that I was with last night, they think everything is going wrong. Now, what do we mean by this? Given our culture, this is the toughest principle to understand. It's easy to get caught up if only they had this, or if the doctor had that, or when she had done this. These are very human reactions to frustrating and sad circumstances. Spiritually speaking, everything is unfolding exactly as it must at all times. Remember, we don't know how the story is supposed to go. And that's why our presence is the greatest present. And now, thanks to AARP, we know the value of what is truly invaluable. Thank you so much for being with me. And as we always say, onward. in love and caregiving. Namaste. God bless you, and thank you so much for being with me today. Now, get out the green. It's St. Patrick's Day. Happy St. Patrick's Day.